Set in the 1920s, the movie leans into its pulp era energy. Sand, relics, curses, and plenty of firepower. There's something about watching Wayne-style adventures with period rifles and revolvers that just fits. So let's strip away the mysticism and dig into the metal. The guns of the mummy. The Lebel Model 1886. One of the first rifles to make an appearance is the Lebel Model 1886, a French 8mm bolt-action rifle, and the first military rifle designed to fire smokeless powder cartridges. That one innovation, smokeless powder, was a revolution. With black powder, every shot drowned you in white smoke. Visibility gone after 3 or 4 rounds. Smokeless powder changed everything. Cleaner, faster, and with higher pressure, giving longer range and better stopping power. The Lebel became the workhorse of the French infantry through World War I, respected for its strength and reliability. Cursed for its slow reload compared to the faster clip-fed rifles of other nations like Britain's Lee Enfield. Over its long production run between 1887 and 1920, more than 2.8 million were built. A weapon of transition, half modern, half antique, and it shows. The Lebel's design borrowed heavily from the Kropatschek rifle, which already used an under-barrel tube magazine and cartridge lifter system. The Lebel fired 8x50mm R Lebel rounds, with the tubular magazine holding 8 cartridges beneath the barrel, plus one in the elevator and one in the chamber. 10 total if fully topped off. In theory, that was a lot of firepower. In practice, soldiers rarely loaded it that way. French doctrine at the time ordered men to fire single deliberate shots, or loading from their pouches after each one, saving the magazine as a last-ditch reserve. That's where the magazine cutoff came in. The small lever that let them disable the magazine feed, keeping the rifle in single-shot mode. It's a strange little relic of 19th century thinking, and a neat detail that the mummy actually gets right. You can spot soldiers and even O'Connell himself loading single rounds between shots, just like the real French troops did. Before O'Connell ever gets to drain his magazine, though, he loses the rifle entirely, smashing one of the Tuareg riders off his horse with it, and tossing the weapon aside in that chaotic opening gunfight. During the attack on the boat, there's a flash of chaos. Fire, smoke, shouts in the middle of it all. A Magi warrior steps into view holding not one but 2 Mauser C96 pistols, the broomhandles. You can tell right away by those strange slab-sided grips, shaped like they were borrowed off a cleaning closet. Advanced for their time, deadly up close, elegant in their own strange mechanical way. Funny thing about the C96, wasn't even supposed to exist. Paul Mauser, the man behind the name, wasn't a fan of the project at all. It was his workshop superintendent, Fidel Federley, and his brothers Friedrich and Joseph who tinkered with the idea in their off hours. They saw something Mauser didn't, the future. By the time he finally caught on after watching his competitors make bank on self-loading pistols, the Federley brothers had already finished the design. Mauser added his name, but not much else. The pistol made quite the impression when it was shown to the Kaiser himself, who reportedly loved it. Still, the German military passed. Too strange, too new, maybe too far ahead. But other nations bought in. Small batches here and there during World War I, and on the civilian market, it was a hit, in England especially, where British officers were free to buy their own sidearms. Many ditched their stodgy Webleys for this futuristic broom handle. 10 rounds instead of 6, that's an easy choice when your life's on the line. And the features? God, the features. That detachable wooden stock that doubled as a holster, pure brilliance. Compact, practical, stylish. The early versions were chambered in 7.63 by 25mm Mauser, a flat-shooting hot little cartridge. But when the Great War rolled around, the German army asked Mauser to make a 9mm variant to match their Luger P08s. Those were stamped with a big red 9 on the grip, hence the Red 9 nickname. Later, the Chinese made their own knockoffs, some even in 45 ACP, because of course they did. The C96 was fed from the top with a stripper clip, old school, elegant, and slightly awkward, but it worked. Depending on the model, it could hold 6, 10, or 20 rounds. 10 was the sweet spot. In the film, it's the only time we see them fire. A short, violent burst of history punching holes through the smoke as the Magi warrior shoots at Rick. Then came the other half of the storm. Jonathan, trying to escape the chaos, bumps into the Americans who are clearly enjoying the carnage. Mr. Henderson cools a card sharp, dual wields a pair of Colt Single Action Army revolvers like he was born with them. You know the gun, the Colt 45, the Peacemaker, the 6-shooter that defined the American West and half the movies that came after it. Born in 1873 for the U.S. Army, the Colt SAA became a legend almost instantly. 6 rounds of 45 Colt ammunition, single action only. Pull the hammer back for every shot, and every pull gives you that beautiful rhythm of 4 crisp clicks. Colt, as the old gunsmiths say. The first clicks the safety notch, keeping the firing pin off the primer so it doesn't go off by accident. The second half cock frees the cylinder to spin for loading. The third locks it in line, and the fourth full cock means it's ready to sing. The barrels came in all flavors: the 4.75-inch gunfighter, the 5.5-inch artillery, and the long 7.5-inch cavalry. The spring-loaded ejector rod sat under the barrel to pop out spent shells, slow by today's standards, smooth as silk in the right hands. Henderson spins them with that lazy confidence that only old Western shooters seem to have, like he's not fighting for his life, just showing off for an audience we can't see. The M93, small fixes, same soul. By 1893, the French refined the design into the Lebel 1886 M93, strengthening the bolt and addressing minor flaws. Many older models were converted to this new standard, and it's likely these updated rifles are what we actually see on screen. Outside the opening battle, the Lebel disappears, replaced by more practical sidearms and the eclectic mix of early 20th century firepower that follows O'Connell through the film. But that moment, the dust and chaos of the Desert Skirmish, belongs entirely to the old French warhorse, the last gas of 19th century design before the modern battlefield took over. The Model 1895 was born in an age when every major power wanted a rifle that could reload faster, shoot straighter, and survive the mud. Built from 1895 to around 1915, it was a bolt-action, magazine-fed rifle chambered in 7x57mm Mauser, a cartridge that earned a nasty reputation for range and penetration. The rifle's internal magazine held 5 rounds, fed either one at a time or with a stripper clip. And that little piece of metal, the stripper clip, changed everything. A cheap, simple rail that held 5 cartridges together so a soldier could shove them all in at once, reload, and get back to firing. Doesn't sound like much, but during wars like World War I, where bolt-action rifles ruled the trenches, a few seconds shaved off reloading could mean survival. It boosted rate of fire, kept production costs low, and became standard almost overnight. The Touareg in the film seemed to be wielding the carbine variant, same rifle, just trimmed down. The carbine's barrel runs about 18.3 inches compared to the full rifle's long 29-inch pipe. It was made for cavalry and artillery units, easy to carry, faster to swing around from horseback, and still deadly accurate for its size. Another rifle shows up in the hands of the men on horseback, the Snider Enfield Mark II, a 19th century British breechloader chambered in 5.77 Snider, first introduced in 1866. It's an odd sight here, a relic from an older war still clinging to relevance. The Snider Enfield was born from the mind of Jacob Snider, an American who figured out a way to breathe new life into outdated muzzle loaders. His conversion design turned slow front-loading muskets into fast breech-loading rifles. A quick distinction here. Breech-loading means you feed the cartridge from the rear of the barrel at the breech. Muzzle-loading means you shove powder and ball down the front. One method belongs to the past, the other to progress. The Snider Enfield was long, just over 54 inches, and primitive by modern standards. It didn't have an ejector. Once a round was spent, the shooter had to pull the brass free by hand or simply flip the rifle over and let gravity do the work. Still, compared to the clumsy muzzle loaders it replaced, this was a revolution. Soldiers could now reload directly into the breech, cutting the reload time to a fraction of what it once was. In a time when seconds decided survival, it wasn't just an advantage, it was salvation. Large-scale production of the Snider Enfield wound down by the late 1870s, finally ending in the 1880s, but the rifle lived on, serving in scattered corners of the empire and in foreign armies well into the early 1900s. It had seen more battlefields than most men who ever held it, a weapon of endless wars, loyal and outdated all at once. Still, by the 1920s, seeing it in the hands of men on horseback feels like a curse. Against repeating rifles and automatic fire, that Snider was a coffin waiting for an owner. When the Twigs broke through the French lines and start pushing them back, Connor loses his rifle and reaches for something faster. A pair of Chamelot Delvine Model 1873 revolvers. I'll save those for later since Rick's character basically lives with them in hand for most of the movie, and the best scenes with them deserve their own moment. After he empties the revolvers and tosses them aside, Connor digs into his belt and draws a pair of Colt M1911 pistols. Now here's where things get interesting. According to production research, the armorer actually used authentic pre-1926 M1911s, not the later A1 variant that Hollywood usually fakes. There's a brief shot in the sand after Rick throws both pistols, and you can tell. The frame has no relief cuts near the trigger guard and lacks the arched mainspring housing, both features added during the 1924 redesign into the A1. The grips, though, don't have the double diamond checkering you'd expect on original 1911s. That doesn't disprove authenticity, just means the grips were swapped somewhere along the way, probably after years of wear. Either way, it's a subtle but impressive detail, a film that actually respected history enough to get the guns right down to the millimeter. The Colt M1911 was the brainchild of John Browning, and calling it iconic feels like an understatement. Few handguns have shaped warfare and culture the way this one did. From the trenches of World War I to the humid jungles of Vietnam, the M1911 defined what a sidearm could be. Adopted by the U.S. military in 1911, it stayed in official service until 1985, when it was finally replaced by the Beretta M9. Though to this day, special units, cops, and civilian shooters still run it, often modernized but unmistakably Browning at its core. It fires 45 ACP, feeding from a 7-round single-stack magazine, and has an effective range of about 50 meters. Though anyone who's handled one knows the truth, it's less about range and more about stopping power. It's recoil-operated, meaning the energy from each shot drives the slide back, ejecting the empty casing and chambering the next round. Simple, brutal, beautiful.